this was your Defender, which would you prefer? And as you can see, when it's leather wrapped, it's going to soften all the edges. So I'm getting awfully good at turning bigger pieces of aluminum into smaller ones. Welcome back to the Lost Cause Ranch. And as you see, once again, it is LS3 swapped Defender Day, which is always a good day. And we are back on our custom built aluminum, or as this guy would say, aluminium dashboard. Not only are we stuffing a 430 horsepower LS3 V8 into this Defender, we also converted it from right-hand drive to left-hand drive, which means we needed to switch out the dashboard. But in wonderful Joe fashion, I also decided let's put air conditioning in it. And I don't like the factory air conditioning add-on. So we're in the process of making our own dash. And as you can see in this pile of scrap, it's not exactly the easiest thing ever. Who would have thought? So last video we left off with the dashboard sitting in this state. I kind of had an idea what I wanted to do with the passenger side, but I also wanted your guys' opinion on that. Just to recap, after getting the passenger side mocked up and set into place, I wasn't quite happy with how bulky this looked compared to the driver's side. Driver's side has a much better flow to it. This is much boxier and bulky. Obviously wasn't exactly happy with it. And turns out most of you guys agreed with me on slimming this guy down. So what I think we're gonna do is take our handy dandy Sharpie and we're gonna lay out some reference marks. So to match the driver's side, we'd have to bring it up to that point, but we can't do that all the way across because the blower motor is going to be in the way. So what we're going to have to do is mark out how far we have to have it come down to this point to clear that. And it looks like about that point there is where we need to end up. But I think for a little definition and detail, we would angle this right around this point, and if we get in our passenger seat, that should give us a little more knee room. So we'll take this guy off and we'll do some adjusting on our file and recut, rebend this side. Shockingly enough, I once again messed up the order of operations while bending something. See, sheet metal bending is something I probably just don't do often enough to keep everything fresh in my head, especially when you're doing a bunch of different oddball things. So what I screwed up here is I got this side bent to the correct shape, but I also bent the side I didn't want to bend as much. What I should have done is remove a couple of the fingers out of the finger brake so that when I slid it in there, this part wouldn't get bent, and then I would bend that on its own later. But I didn't. Now we're gonna do a little bit of on-bending. There we go. We'll see if that is enough. Not quite. I didn't much like how this was coming out, so we got rid of it. We're just gonna make this as a separate piece and weld it on, flush it out. You won't be able to tell with the finished product after it's all blended, but I think it's gonna turn out much nicer than what I had going on there before. Of course I hit it. Had it all lined up perfectly before, and I just hit it again. So now that we got the lower piece out of the way, we got to do a little bit more adjusting on this section yet. So we got a gap at the bottom, and if we close that gap up, we run into the blower motor some. So I think we're going to put a slice in this top lip right there and let this bend out a little bit and give us some clearance while keeping this side symmetrical with the other side, and just adjust this section out. As with everything in life, it's a little bit of compromise. If we want our little more modern vintage air HVAC setup with air conditioning, we gotta give up a little bit of room, but we're going to do our best to make sure that the aesthetics and the function stay true to the classic Defender dashboard. Like I said, this is obviously quite a bit different than the classic Defender dashboard, but I want it to feel like it could have been, just with a little Lost Cause custom touch. So we're going to make sure we line the cut on top up with the cutout on the bottom. Little speed square makes that nice and easy. So that gives you a visual of how much we bent this side out. Gives us the clearance we're going to need. Now that we did that, we need to adjust this part of the lip. Essentially, we have to take that same little pie cut out of this side. So when we butt up to our center stack, that runs parallel with this. We now need this edge to also run parallel to that. So we have a nice tight fit up. So right now you see we got that gap with the corner ramming right into that. So on our little end plate, we have our side mounting tab, this guy, that'll bolt to the bulkhead. That's gonna mount something like that. The depth of that notch is the same thickness as this. So therefore, when we butt this guy up against the bulkhead, it'll sit nice and flush. That way we get a fairly tight fit up along the bulkhead. Bulkhead is not perfectly smooth by any means. This is a nice straight edge, and we're touching down here, up here, little gap in the middle, but that's not a big deal because we will obviously be putting some sort of welting or rubber isolator along the edge of the dashboard at every touch point, because as most of you know, Defenders are already rattle traps. We don't need to add to that with a sheet metal aluminum dash banging against the bulkhead, creating a racket. But I really do think slimming that down was the ticket. What do you guys think? This way or the old way? I'm a fan of how much tighter and symmetrical it looks now. Just plays the part a whole frick of a lot better. Now we just got to come up with the rest of our little cover down here. We're gonna come down, angle, shoot it down there, make a triangle filler piece. Although, just frickin' stay. Although someone, can't remember off the top of my head who it was, in the last dash video, suggested to leave the blower motor exposed. And man, that wouldn't look half bad either. And seeing it like this, I'm kind of tempted. But we got it designed to cover, so we'll just continue on with that. Although I do really like the less work option of leaving it exposed, because it'd be less work. So we're going back to a little CAD work, a little cardboard aided design. We're going to template out our little cover piece with cardboard before we mess up some more aluminum. You know, because we have some spare bits laying around now. So we got the majority of that bottom cover mapped out in some cardboard. We just need to template out this triangle. I think what I'm going to try and do is make this in two pieces. This in one that will bend there, and then we'll weld a flat triangle in for that side. That gives us our clearance we're looking for. I think that looks all right too. You never quite know though until it's all back in aluminum, because the difference in cardboard to aluminum with some masking tape kind of throws off the eyeballs a little bit. But I do think I like the way that sits. Well, that didn't even draw. We'll try that. That should work out as well. Now we just need to turn these two into metal. And even though we have our fancy pants CNC plasma, I think we're going to go old school with this one. So the bend in this guy with one piece didn't really work out quite as well as I was hoping. It was hard to get the fit up, so decided to chop it apart, make three pieces. But I think that is the ticket. It's just taped into place right now, but much better now that we see it all in aluminum. Obviously, this will get welded up, flushed out, and we'll hammer and dolly that smooth so it looks like one flat piece. But it is starting to come together. Much, much happier with this than what we had last time with the first rendition. Once we get this actually mounted, it'll sit a little closer to that, even with that cutout. How are you guys feeling about that in comparison to this big bulky one? You can see how much we trimmed down. It's just the first 3.5 inches coming out of the center stack. That's the same depth as before. And the big ticket now is we have the slim down side end plate where it dives up at a much sharper angle. And this plate is the mirror image of that plate. So now it's the same through and through, side to side. I think that's going to give the whole works a more cohesive look. We'll get a taste of what this might look like finished out here at the end of the video. But before that, I want to kind of get our top bar mocked up into place. Something a touch better than the cardboard that we cut out on our little laser over there. Although that gave us a pretty good visual on what we wanted to accomplish. Well, just went to clean up the 2 upper dash pieces that I cut out and realized I screwed up. So I woke up this morning and drew these up quick before coming out to the shop so I could cut them first thing, but I drew them up wrong. Hard to believe that my notes I made last night weren't clear in what I needed, but no, I thought about this wrong. I need to have a little offset angle because these side plates actually dive in a little bit towards the center of the car. So I made that dive there, but what actually has to happen is this needs to be straight and it needs to come out and out. So getting awfully good at turning bigger pieces of aluminum into smaller ones. I suppose we can use those for some smaller pieces that we cut out later. But here are the new and improved upper dash pieces. This is going to have 2 bends on it in roughly that shape. Upper one will be done on the brake. Lower one, I did some relief cuts and we'll bend that by hand. Problem with this and 2 bends that close together is we can't make it happen. There's not enough clearance to have it bend in a U that close together. We would need a press brake with gooseneck dies, which we don't have yet. You'll see when we bend here what we run into. We hit the brake itself before we can get both to 90, but the relief cuts let us just tweak it by hand into place. Both bent up now, so we can weld in our end pieces on each of them. So the one with the hole is the inner side. We'll punch a corresponding hole into the center stack, and that hole is going to allow us to run the ductwork for the defroster vent. We don't need a foggy windshield, so we'll have 3 defroster vents, 1 on each side, 1 in the center. So the top bars are in place and it's really starting to come together and show its actual final form. I think that is gonna look pretty frickin' slick on there. Now on these edges here and everything, we will flange those, box them, along with these will be flanged in to give everything a more finished look, similar to this here. I was just waiting to see this in place so I can decide which way I'm gonna go, because some of this is gonna be painted and some of it's gonna be wrapped in leather, but man, I am frickin' happy with how this looks. I personally think this was the way to go, slimming that down compared to the bulky one. It just looks frickin' slick. These types of projects are what I truly love to do. This is just fun, kinda making something out of nothing and kinda letting your brain go wild. Sometimes a bit too wild, as you can see, because my brain doesn't always run in the right direction. Now my next step is to sit here and figure out what is gonna be painted body color, what's gonna be leather, because that's gonna determine how some of this is all built out. Because say if this is going to be leather and this is painted and this is painted, we'll make this a separate piece that bolts in. But if it's all going to be leather with just some of this painted, I'm going to weld the dash completely together and it'll be installed in one single unit. We'll be able to bolt all our ancillaries inside to the dash itself and just kind of throw it up there. I really think at least the top of the dash would look really nice wrapped in leather. That gives you an idea of what it would look like. And as you can see, when it's leather wrapped, it's going to soften all the edges. So these sharper edges will have a little more radius to them. And we have a few different leather samples here. I kind of have an idea which way I want to go, but man, that's going to look pretty slick. Right at this moment, in my head at least, I'm leaning towards leather wrapped center stack, leather wrapped upper dash, and these painted body color. But I think I'm just gonna sit and stare at this thing for hours on end, and that decision will change 15,000 times in that period. Other than the leather, we have one more decision to make before we can move on with the dashboard, and that is our instrument panel. So right now I'm kind of sitting between whether we're doing a digital dash to go with the updated powertrain, not 100% in love with that, or a classic dial style gauges, which is what I'm leaning towards. With the classic look, I think that is going to fall in line better. But let me know what you guys think. If this was your Defender, which would you prefer? More modern, tablet style looking digital dash that has way more options and information, or something that looks like it belongs in what is essentially a vehicle that was designed 70 frickin' years ago. With that being said, that is where we're going to end off on the dashboard today. Major progress, super happy with how this is all coming together, but we will catch you on the next one. Not sure what that's going to be yet. We have our poor little Freelander that obviously needs the engine checked out. Soon we're going to dive into trying to figure out what's clanking around in there. Hopefully not too detrimental. We also have some supplies for the next project in the shop. So you'll probably see one of those next. But either way, I appreciate you guys watching and appreciate you subscribing.